okay, my energy dropped, then my heart rate variability dropped. My brain fog was horrendous. I couldn't think straight. My body started breaking out in hives. I was like, something is not okay. It was my body literally trying to get rid of the toxins. So my body knew that something was going on before I really knew that something was going on. So we got some blood work done. If you've been training a lot, I said, yeah, that it could be related to that. And I was like, okay. It was one of those moments where it's like God really had to like bring you to your knees in a way that didn't make any sense, that you would just pause.
Welcome back, you guys, to another episode of the Beyond the Scale podcast. I'm your host, Katherine, and today we have a special guest. We have Amanda Soukoulis, and Amanda and I actually met in a Unstoppable Women's Mastermind that I'm a part of, and I'm so excited to have her on the podcast today because she has had a crazy health journey with her own gut health, and it has led her and inspired her to now become a health coach and help other women. So we're going to learn all about her and her journey. But before we do, I want to do a quick little intro so that you can get to know a little bit more of her background and what makes her such an awesome coach today. So Amanda is a functional nutrition and wellness coach specializing in gut health and fostering harmony among the mind, body, and spirit. Her personal health journey transformed her struggles into a source of inspiration for others, leading her to create a coaching program that focuses on healing from the inside out. As a former collegiate athlete, Amanda excelled as a team member, captain, and later coach for the nationally ranked Penn State Lionettes dance team. Her dedication to this art and sport earned her 4 final appearances with 4 different professional cheerleading teams, most recently the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders. After her final audition, life-altering health challenges prompted her to focus inward and become the CEO of her health. This journey led her to healing through functional nutrition and lifestyle changes, ultimately turning her pain into her purpose. Amanda transitioned from a data-driven corporate career as a CPA at a private equity firm to a life of a more intentional impact, combining her analytical skills with a deep understanding of the human body. Today, she offers a transformational coaching program to her clients, having personally navigated similar struggles that empowers them to heal at the root, thrive on real food, and embrace their feminine power. So welcome, Amanda, to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's so lovely to be here. I'm so grateful for this time that we get right now.
So can you start by sharing your personal health journey that you went through not too long ago that led you to your journey today to helping other women with their gut health and then functional nutrition?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to my final professional cheerleading finals appearance. And, I would say that was a mountaintop that I was on. And shortly after that, all of a sudden my energy just plummeted. And I was like, there is something going on. And I wear a Whoop, which is a tracking device for your heart rate, and it kind of monitors your sleep, your stress, the strain on your body, and just your overall recovery. And one measure that they look at is called heart rate variability. And the heart rate variability kind of tells you how balanced your nervous system is. So it tells you how ready you are to take on the day. And all of a sudden, like what felt like out of nowhere, my heart rate variability plummeted. And so my body knew that something was going on before I really knew that something was going on. So shortly after, it was like, okay, my energy dropped, then my heart rate variability dropped. I was like, something is not okay. I'd gone to my yearly woman's like wellness appointment checkup, and I kind of had said, starting to feel some weird symptoms. Maybe can we get some blood work? So we got some blood work done, and my liver enzyme came back a little bit high, but she was like, have you been training a lot? I said, yeah, that it could be related to that. So she didn't really like say that anything was wrong. Then all of a sudden my gut, just the chronic bloating kind of started to happen, and I started to have other GI issues, and I was like, there's really something not right. So I'd been working with a functional practitioner she specializes in a certain gene that's linked to Alzheimer's and dementia because I had a family member who had passed away from that. And so my mom and I and my sister wanted to get tested a few years back to see if we had the same gene. And so I had worked with her before, and so I went back to her and I said, "Hey, I'm kind of feeling these different symptoms at this point. My energy levels, my brain fog had started to set in. I'm like, I can't really think clearly, and I don't really have enough energy to get through a day. I'm not as productive as I usually have been. There's something not really right with me." And she started asking me different questions, and she asked, like, "Have you changed anything in your diet?" And I was like, "Well, I incorporated a little bit of Greek yogurt back in." And she was like, "Dairy's really not good for you. Cut the dairy out, but I think that's it." And I was like, "Okay, I don't think it's just the dairy. I think that I need to get more answers." And I felt kind of just a little bit dismissed by her. And so I just started doing a lot of research on my own. I started reading different books on the gut microbiome because it was like right below my belly button. It was distended like a few inches. And I was like, something's not right because I really haven't changed that much in my diet. I haven't changed that much of my exercise, and my stress levels really weren't all that high. And so uh, that led me to kind of just down this search. And that's when I found functional medicine and functional nutrition. And at the time, I was able to partner with a coach that was able to get testing done. And so what we did was we did a complete testing. We did complete blood panel. We did a Dutch test, which was able to look at my hormone levels, all 35 hormones, and then we did a gut test to see what was going on with my gut. And we had tried to do, they have certain diets to like kind of lock you in, like, okay, we're going to try this for a month and see what's going on. Nothing worked. I was trying everything with her, nothing worked. I'm like, there's something not okay. And this was by this time, so my symptoms kind of started in August. September, they started getting worse. I started searching for answers then. At this point, when I had found the practitioner, it was November, and my brain fog was horrendous. I couldn't think straight. It was horrible. And in December, my body started breaking out in hives. Like I would wake up, my whole body covered in hives, and it was my body literally trying to get rid of the toxins, and we didn't at this point know what was going on. And finally, between Thanksgiving and Christmas, we got the results back, and we found out that I had the main thing was the bacterial pathogens. We found a bacterial pathogen that was uh, very uncommon, to say the least, for my current situation. Most people that get this bacteria pathogen, they're over the age of 65, they're in a hospital setting, and they're on antibiotics. And I was like, huh, okay,
Yeah.
good. Like it was one of those moments where it's like God really had to like bring you to your knees in a way that didn't make any sense, that you would just pause. And that was what I like to say, like, was that was the final straw. But there was a lot of other things going on in my body that had been warning signs that I had ignored. So we also found out that I had leaky gut, which was caused by stress to the body. We had found out that my hormones were all imbalanced, and like my estrogen levels were that of a postmenopausal woman. So yeah,
And
so
you're
my
20, how old are you?
I'm
20,
27.
27.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was like a secondary cause from what we find out was what was going on with my gut, and my thyroid was a little sluggish. And so kind of we start to piece together everything, and the bacterial pathogen was just what was the final straw that kind of was the tip of the iceberg that we saw that actually like was like, oh, we need to uproot this bacterial pathogen, otherwise it's going to continue to go and destroy all the other body systems.
Wow. That is a lot. Were you scared, or were you more relieved that you had found like what was causing this, or was it just like a combination of both?
I was so relieved, honestly. it was kind of one of those moments where it was like, I'm not crazy. There was something that was actually going on that was serious because honestly, most of the people in my sphere, they're like not that they thought I was being dramatic, but they're like, we know how you operate, Amanda. Like there's no
Yeah.
way that your energy just plummeted this much and that you just can't remember things and you can't just show up to things. And I'm like, no, I literally could not. It was so difficult, and I just like would look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, I don't even recognize this woman right now. And so when we did get the results back, it was like, okay, this is going to be a long path to healing. It's not going to be easy, but we know what's going on. So it was kind of in that moment that I was like, this is where we turn my pain into purpose.
Yeah. And two, I think that you've shared a little bit about this on like your social media, but when you started going through all of this, you were very much trying to just like brush it off and keep going, right? Like there was that point where you decided, okay, this is serious, I need to stop. But in the beginning, you probably chalked it up to just overtraining, being stressed about like your auditions and everything that you were going through, right?
Yes. Yeah. For a period of time, from like July to probably October, the auditions were in June. So the month after, for another few months, I definitely was still going at the same speed that I had been able to sustain and sustain very well for a
Yeah.
few years. And mm, there was like nights where I remember there was one night in the fall where I feel like I just had so much energy. I didn't know how to control it all and I didn't know what to do with it all. And there was one night in the middle of the night I was woken up at like 2 a.m. and all of a sudden was just throwing up all night. Didn't even didn't even know why or what had caused it. I wasn't feeling sick and I laid back down for like 45 minutes and my alarm went off for my workout. And I got up and I went to my workout class and I got through the whole workout. It was a great workout. And I looked at my trainer after and I was like, I was throwing up all night and I still made it to class. And he looked at me and was like, nodding his head, like, no, Amanda, that's not the answer. The answer is that you needed to rest. And I think I had just grown accustomed to go, go, go rather than to finding time to rest and finding time to sit in that and to be like, it's okay, Amanda, if you sleep in a little bit this morning. It's actually better for your body.
Mm. That's so hard for many people. And, you know, you and I are in different stages of life because I have two small children, but I can compare kind of what you were going through at that time to my life sometimes in a way that, you know, my kids might be up one night, one of them might be sick, or there's just a lot of stress going on with taking care of them. And I so bad want to stay with my routine. I want to stick with going to the gym and I want to do all of the things. And on the nights where you might get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, that's probably the day you need to sleep in. And I try to tell our clients that at the gym. And sometimes they're like, they're just so dedicated to their journey. But I'm like, that's a part of your journey too. Like rest has to be a part of your journey, or you're going to get burnout, or you're going to end up sick, or something worse is going to happen.
Yeah, sleep is one thing that you cannot neglect
Right.
in your health journey. And I had done that and been able to sustain it until my body said no more.
Yeah.
And so you're so right. It has been I had to learn it the tough way, but my hope is that the people that I partner with and I get to share my story with, that it's like you don't have to do it that way. You're
No.
actually your body's gonna be able to recover and repair more if you're getting that 7.5 or 8 hours of sleep, rather than if you're not getting enough sleep or you're not sleeping well and getting up and just trying to fight your way through the day.
Yeah. So, can you share with us in your own personal journey, you learned a lot about your gut health. And I know there was other things that you've learned about and you can help other people with as well. But when it comes to your gut health, what are some symptoms, and you've mentioned a few that you had, that women experience that are likely linked to gut health, but we don't actually know that?
Yeah, yeah. So the first thing that I talked about was my brain, right? My brain fog that set
Mhm.
in. The brain gut connection is so strong. In fact, 90% of our serotonin is actually produced in our gut. So that brain gut connection is strong. It's there. So you think about any sort of anxiety or depression or mood instability or brain fog, those are all big contributing factors related to the brain. And then your skin, if you're having acne or eczema, psoriasis, those are also can be linked to gut health and hormonal imbalances, your thyroid, autoimmune. So a lot of times, if you have autoimmunity, that's really a ripple effect. That's a secondary effect, and oftentimes it can lead back to the gut.
Mm. Yeah, it's crazy because like I feel like all of those categories I just wrote all of the things that you said down. We never, or at least I haven't in the past, thinking to myself like, "Oh, what's going on with my hormones?" or "Why am I having acne right now?" I'm not likely thinking about my gut, and I'm not thinking about what I'm putting in my body because that's the next step, right? It's like kind of taking inventory of how you're fueling your body currently, and could that be one of the reasons why your gut health is out of whack and you're having these symptoms? So can you talk to us a little bit about what were some things that you had to do and that you had to change right off the bat to start healing your gut?
Yeah. So all all disease really it boils down to stress in the body, and stress comes in a variety of different ways. I like to say it's either emotional, dietary, physical, or environmental. So the emotional side, that is the stress that you might have in relationships or at work or just life in general. A little bit of stress is fine, but if it's chronic stress, what can actually happen is this is where the brain gut connection links to one another, and the cortisol from your body that's produced from your brain, it'll actually it'll increase so much from the stress that's caused that it'll break down the lining of your gut. So that's where the
Yeah.
stress creates a breakdown in your gut, and that's what causes leaky gut. And when you have leaky gut, that's when all these toxins from your body then leak into the rest of your body. They break through that blood brain barrier. So that emotional stress that you think might just be coming in, it actually your whole body absorbs it and
Mhm.
it sends it down to your gut. So then you have also dietary. So yes, there's like you shouldn't be eating processed foods. You should stay away from certain sugars. You know, you hear all of those things,
Right.
or seed oils, vegetable oils. But also your body could have intolerances and sensitivities that you don't even know about. So for example, when I run my clients through testing, when I did my own personal testing, it came back that I had a food sensitivity to salmon, halibut, oats, rye, and a few other things, a really high sensitivity to cashews too, which makes me laugh because I never even eat them and I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I eat salmon, I eat halibut, I eat oats all the time. So what did that tell me? That told me, hey, Amanda, sometimes when you eat the same thing too much, your body will actually build up an intolerance to it if your gut is not healthy.
Yeah.
So there's the dietary side of like, you shouldn't be eating these certain foods. These are these parts of, the standard American diet, the SAD diet,
Right.
as we like to say. But there's also your personal, like, hey, this is not good for me right now. My body cannot heal if it's constantly being fed salmon and halibut.
Yeah.
Then you have the physical side. So that could be for those that are, like I was training so hard. So I was overtraining, but I wasn't recovering enough. I think I was training enough, but I wasn't recovering enough. So there's that part of it. And then the environmental, and that's where the bacterial pathogen came into play for me. But there's so many different ways that toxins can get in through your body just from the environment. And so just kind of learning to be aware of what those are and what steps you can take to eradicate and eliminate those.
Mm. There's so many layers here. I want to go back to the dietary because I know that, you know, we know processed foods are not good for us. And then when you strip away that layer and get down to like more of, okay, should you be avoiding dairy? Should you be gluten free? Maybe do you have celiacs? Like all these other things. A lot of women that I've worked with at the gym, they don't want to go that route because they think it's too extreme. Like they don't want to have to eliminate gluten. They don't want to have to eliminate dairy. They're like, I can't sustain this. What would you say would be like the first step in determining, are you actually, does your body actually have some sort of intolerance to one of those things? How do you find that out? Like, is it through testing? Is it through like an elimination diet? How do they determine if they should do that?
Yeah, I love to go by the approach test, don't guess. So
Okay.
personally, I I liked to be able to get an entire gut test that told me, hey, these are the things that your body doesn't respond to well. There's also
Mhm.
some really cool genetics tests that can help identify some of those things too. And so that's one route. Once you get the testing, then you know. Like, it's funny because my gut health journey really started in high school when I went to gastrointestinal GI doc for the very first time. And I went in, they put the scope down, and they just told me cut out gluten, cut out dairy, but they didn't have any reason to tell me to cut out gluten and dairy. Fast forward 10 years, and I got tested for celiac and it came back negative. So, yes, I'm not allergic to the celiac part of gluten,
Mm.
but there's still other parts of how gluten is processed in America that make my body not respond very well. So, if people don't want like the all or nothing mentality, I would recommend, well, let's just test and see, because you're not gonna put something in your body that you're allergic to. So
Right.
if there's a legitimate reason not to, then it may not be a good idea to keep feeding yourself with that, because it'll just cause inflammation to the body.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It's just gonna cause inflammation, and I believe that too is, I mean, the gut health and the inflammation, they go hand in hand, but that's a very popular topic. Going back to your celiac and you actually not being like not having the celiac disease, I find it interesting. My mother, she's almost 60 years old now, and she's been a client, of many different programs, but most recently of Fit Body Boot Camp since I became an owner, many years ago. But she always says when she's trying to lose weight or trying to get back on track, I just need to eliminate the bread. I just need to stop eating the bread. And I'm like, it's not the bread. It's the way the bread is made, the bread that you are eating. It's that it's processed. I was like, if you're eating whole grain bread that like someone's making from scratch with real grains and it's not full of processed ingredients and sugar, there's nothing wrong with the bread. And I think that there's this misconception that carbs are bad, all carbs are bad. All carbs are not created equal. And so to your point about the celiac and the oatmeal, it's like oatmeal was something that you had a reaction to, but it's not necessarily all celiac or all things that have that. They're all different and they're all made differently.
Yeah, yeah. All carbs are not created equal. Also, all calories are not created equal, because
Right.
I always like to use the comparison of, think of like your favorite sports car. What kind of gas are you going to put in your favorite sports car?
Yeah.
You're definitely not going to put the lowest level gas. You're going to put in premium gas.
Hmm.
So, if we want to be able to function in our brain, in our bodies, how we show up for people, how we show up for ourselves, we want to be fueling with the absolute best.
Hmm.
And so, the first step is that awareness of knowing, okay, how do I fuel my body for its best? And then it's sticking to the plan and figuring out what works for you, because not one diet is going to work the same for everybody.
Right. Yeah. So you healed you're still healing now. You're healing your gut and you have decided I'm going to use all this experience that I've gained and this transformation that I've had and help other women. Can you share with us, because we talked before the show, I would love for our listeners to get some like tactical things that they can use in their life today from this. Can you share with us some foods that you are like, you do not need to be eating those, and then some foods that you need to be loading up your grocery cart with?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you walk into the grocery store, I always say you want to stay on the outside perimeters as much as possible. We want to be going for those whole foods, those all the different colors of the rainbow. We want to be looking for high quality protein sources. Go for that wild caught fish and the uh, the the grass fed and finished foods and proteins of that sort. That's what we want to be looking for. And it goes beyond, right? We talked about cutting out the processed foods and cutting out the sugar, but I think sometimes, you might have a bit of a sweet tooth. So my recommendation is you want to look at labels and look and see what kind of sugar is in it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's stevia or it's monk fruit, those are great swaps to replace with for sugar. A lot of items these days have sucralose in them. That is really not great for our gut health.
Mm-hmm.
Soy actually is not very great because what it does is it binds to a receptor within our body that confuses our body. And so it confuses our hormones, and that's the reason why soy is something to avoid. So soy lecithin is in a lot of foods. So if you turn over your hand and you look at the label and you see soy lecithin or you see sucralose, those are two that I always look out for. My favorite swap too is how are you preparing your food? And when you go out to eat, how's the kitchen preparing it? What kind of oils are they using? Most often, places are using they're using vegetable oils and they're using seed oils. So what what I do and what I recommend my clients to do, and anyone who wishes to have this card, I've created a little card that says, like, dear staff, I'm allergic to vegetable and seed oils. Please avoid using these oils, and here are some safe alternatives. Thanks for keeping me safe. Thanks for keeping me healthy.
I love that.
And thank you. Well, because it can be intimidating, right? You walk in and you don't want to. You're sitting at a table with friends, family. Maybe it's a business lunch, and you don't want to make a big fuss about things. But what I've found is that when you have this source of authority, this little card, the wait staff is so willing to try to help accommodate. And it was crazy because one time I was out to breakfast with my boyfriend and I said, "Hey, can you please swap whatever oil you put it in with olive oil, vegetable oil, butter, or ghee?" Gave them a handful of options, and it was sweet potatoes. And they came back, and the picture of my sweet potatoes versus his sweet potatoes, it was like night and day difference. It
Really?
was yeah, I'll send you the photos. Crazy, but it just goes to show that, like, those seed oils, like, they really look different. And the reason why seed oils and vegetable oils are so bad is because they're really high in omega-6 fatty acids.
Mm-hmm.
And we know, you hear, like, you need healthy fats. Well, avocado oil and and olive oil and coconut oil and butter and ghee, those all have more omega-3s than omega-6 fatty acids.
Mm-hmm.
And the omega-6 fatty acids cause inflammation in our body. And they actually have a half-life that creates the oils to stay in our body for a lot longer than they should. And so that was one thing that I noticed when I started eating out a little bit more. When I met my boyfriend, I was like, something's not sitting well with my gut.
Yeah.
And then I pinpointed it, and it was those seed oils. So that is definitely one thing that I would recommend, and anyone who wants the card will provide it in the show notes for y'all. But that's a big one.
I really like that. And just like it has me thinking about when you go on vacation, it's not necessarily that you're eating a ton of food that you wouldn't normally eat, but sometimes when you're going out to eat so much, it's the way it's prepared. And it has me thinking about right now, like we go to the pool a lot, and the pool that we go to, it's like they have a cafe. And so my kids are always wanting to order food. And just the other night, I was like, oh, I just don't want to eat here. I'm talking to my husband, and I said, there's nothing that's healthy. And he was like, well, there's nothing wrong with like these chicken tenders. And I'm like, it's the way they make them. I was like, they're so deep fried in this oil. It's just every bite I take, I'm like, I'm not even getting the good protein here. It's just this oil that I'm consuming. And it's the same when you go on vacation. It's just the way things are prepared, to your point, that are ruining the nutritional value of our food.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it on its head, right? Because it's not the chicken that's bad.
Yeah.
It's the vegetable oils that they're putting it in, and it's actually it's so sad because most of the time when I ask, they'll come back and they'll say, we only have a mix of olive oil and canola oil together.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, just use a little bit of butter, just a
Yeah.
little bit then, please, but no canola oil.
Oh, it's so crazy. And I do think that when I wrote down the sucralose because I wanted to mention, so I don't drink soda at all. And when as a like a teenager and like when I was in college, I used to drink that stuff all the time. Didn't think anything of it. Diet soda, regular soda, whatever. And today, like I am very good with my nutrition. And anytime I'll drink like a Diet Coke or like something like that on a whim, I have the worst bloatedness ever. And
Hmm.
it's like instant as soon as I drink it. And then afterwards, I'm like, why did I drink that? And I swear my body like has this crazy reaction to sucralose now because I'm so used to not consuming it. And so, do you feel that because you've been on this track to healing your gut, that now if you have a food that like doesn't really fit into your protocol, it makes you feel worse? Or do you feel like you're getting to a point where you're healing yourself in which it doesn't make that huge of a difference? Because I've heard from different nutrition experts that once you like heal your gut, it is okay, like alcohol, for example. Like I worked with a coach one time and I would tell her, anytime I drink alcohol, I feel terrible for the day after, even, 2 days after. And she said, well, when you heal your gut, it would be okay if you have a drink every now and then. Like we can still have your gut, you can still be healthy. What are your thoughts on that? Like in terms of, consuming something like a deep fried donut every once in a while, or should you just completely avoid it?
Yeah, it's a great question. That is a hot topic for sure. I think that there's certain things that will always make me feel not great.
Yeah.
And because my brain and my gut are they communicate so well, as soon as I have that thing that has a little bit of sucralose or that is just processed, my mood automatically feels it. So
Mhm.
I personally, I've learned to turn inward and know, hey, those things are gonna create these kinds of ripple effects well beyond just how you feel about your body. It for me is a mood shifter. And I don't I don't expect perfection, right, from everyone. Like I think that a healthy 80-20 balance is good. Because sometimes if you're too restrictive, that'll then cause other problems and that could create some more stress and angst. But I do think that I think there's certain foods and certain things that have been added into uh, our our diets that are normal here in the United States that are not good and are not healthy. Like, and those are the foods that I think that should be used in very little moderation. But it's also like, okay, what price do I want to pay?
Right.
Do I want to indulge in this and know that I'm going to feel something negative later? Or can I find a healthier alternative? So,
Right.
like, a good example, like, I'm obsessed with dark chocolate. I love dark chocolate. It's like that is my craving. And so one day I was at the grocery store and I start flipping over all of these labels and you start reading most of these chocolates. And dark chocolate in and of itself is not bad for you. But again, it's what they put into the dark chocolate. So you start reading it and it has sunflower oil or it has soy lecithin or it has sucralose. And like those three alone should be a reason why I don't eat that. So I found there's one chocolate bar out there that I do love that only has like 5 or 6 ingredients, and it is the cleanest chocolate I've ever eaten. And I don't feel bad eating it because I know, yes, it's sweet and yes, it's sugar, but it's not added with all those things that are going to increase the likelihood that my body's going to be inflamed. So, for the people that you're working with that ask those questions, my recommendation would be like, what's a healthy alternative that we can have that can replace that?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, sometimes when you're on this like elimination journey, you almost have to find a swap in the beginning, and then you can slowly start to like eliminate it or have it not as often, over time. Because, as you know, working with your clients, when you're like, hey, tell me all the things you're eating, and then they hand you their sheet and you're like, okay, you're not going to be able to eat any of that anymore. That's way too overwhelming. And that's how they end up giving up because they don't see any way that they can stick to it.
Yeah, the goal of an elimination diet should not be to eliminate all these things forever. The goal of the elimination diet is to see what your body does not respond well to.
Hmm.
So that's why when you ask me, what are your thoughts on elimination diets versus testing? I prefer to go the testing route because then we can see what what we know your body isn't going to respond well to.
Oh,
In the elimination diet, it's more of like trial and error, and it can be kind of frustrating. It was kind of frustrating for me, if I'm being quite honest with you, when I first started my elimination diet, working with my practitioner before we got the results back. She was like, just trust me. This is what we're going to do for this month. I said, okay, I trust you. And it was like very limited on what I could eat. Nothing changed. I started feeling even worse. My brain fog got worse. I was like, this is not working.
yeah.
But that's because we didn't have the answers yet.
Right, right. So if someone listening to this is thinking to themselves, I think I need to work on my gut health. What would you recommend their first step be in terms of testing? Like, can you go to a general practitioner and order the testing that you need to get started? Or do you need to start working with a functional medicine practitioner or a nutrition coach as yourself? Like, what would their first step be? What would you recommend?
Yeah, personally, from my experience, when I've gone to Western medicine doctors and a general practitioner and mentioned uh, the like of, hey, my gut's not feeling very good, I was never really responded to very well. And another thing is that none of my symptoms added up to what ended up being. So the cool thing about functional medicine and functional nutrition is that we look at how the body systems are all interconnected. And that goes back to those symptoms that you may be feeling but you don't think are connected to the gut, but they
Mhm.
really are. And that's where I would say, okay, let's take a deeper look. And that's when you find someone like myself or another functional practitioner, and we're able to actually get the testing done. And it was so empowering once I was able to get certified, and I get to run all of these lab tests that I couldn't even get my doctors to be able to run. They were never willing to run that. And now I can run it and we get results back in a few days, and it's showing all these inflammation markers that, hey, if you don't address it 10 months from now, it might not be a problem, but 10 years from now, this is the trajectory of where we're going. And so my recommendation is, if you don't want to try to do it alone, that's when it would be a great time to partner with a functional coach.
Mm, yeah, I agree. And I've worked with one in the past, and I'm not going to lie, my results were a little overwhelming. But to your point, it for me in that moment, it wasn't necessarily like I need to fix all of these things right now. It was more of like, this is what I need to change so that I can be healthy in the long run, like one thing at a time. Which leads me to my next question, like, what happens when, say, you have somebody come to you and whether they're having very severe symptoms or not, and they get their tests back, and you're like, okay, you have all of these markers, and there's so many different things that we need to work on. Do you work on one thing at a time? Like, what's your approach there? Because I know as a patient of someone who did this for me, it was overwhelming, and I kind of was like, where do I even start?
Yeah, that's a fabulous question because it can be overwhelming. And you see all these results, and they have these little markers next to
Yeah.
them, and they say high risk or medium risk, or sometimes they don't even say that there's risk associated, but there is a lot of risk if you start to dig down. And so my that's my job as your coach, is to be able to say, hey, look, this is everything I'm seeing. This is the how it's affected each of the different systems in your body, and each month we're going to build brick by brick by brick, and we're going to address one system at a time. And so most of the time, if your body's if you've gotten to me, your body's been in fight or flight for a while.
Hmm.
And so we're going to reset your adrenals, and then we're going to be able to focus on your gut, and we go through a whole gut healing protocol. And then from there, we're able to kind of balance out your nervous system. And most of the time, as we start to layer brick by brick by brick, all the systems kind of start to balance and work their way out. And if they don't, then that's when we get to add another brick on. So it's definitely a great question. Like, no, we're not just going to throw it all at you all at once, because oftentimes that's not going to stick. My goal, my job, where my heart is to be able to help first get you onto the path to healing. And then once we're through that healing, it's like, okay, we've made it through gut healing. Now let's get to gut health, where we can optimize you for the rest of your life. I want you to be able to take what you've learned and be able to apply it to your life forever.
How do you feel about supplements? Because I know that was a big part of my journey was, all right, these are all of the things, the markers that we see, and these are some supplements that we believe you should take. And I think that for me was the most overwhelming part was like, well, I'm not going to take these 30 some supplements every day. Like this is just overwhelming. But to that point, I do take supplements every day, and there's still some, like, even I actually just wrote at the beginning of our call, I need to get a multivitamin because I haven't been taking one for the last few months because I ran out and then I just like forgot. And I take other supplements, but I haven't been taking my multivitamin or like my fish oil. And what are some supplements that you recommend any woman take right now, whether they're in a gut healing journey or not? What are some things that like you take and you recommend any of your clients to take?
Yeah, yeah. So I like to say that nutrition, right? Nutrition's going to get us 90% of the way there if we're
Mm.
eating all the right foods, but our bodies are still going to be deficient in certain things. And so that's where supplementation could come in and actually fill those gaps. And I would say, from my personal experience, what I've seen is that most of us are deficient in vitamin D. And if you don't have vitamin D, then your body systems aren't going to be able to do a lot of their jobs. Vitamin D is crucial for so many of the different systems in our body to work. And so getting a vitamin D3, I personally like to take like a liquid one, because then it gets to your bloodstream better. Fish oils are really important, and it's important to look at the fish oils and see what's actually in them, because there's so many fish oils on the market. And I think this is where people get overwhelmed with supplements, is that they're like, well, there's so many options, which one should I look for? And when it comes to fish oil, it's really important that it has EPA and DHA in it. The higher the contents of those, that's actually the omega 3s that you need. You don't just need fish oils, you need omega 3 fatty acids. So, vitamin D3, fish oils. If you're dealing with uh, gut issues and you feel like you need to go down the path to gut healing, glutamine is essential. And I kind of mentioned this earlier. about how when your body has too much cortisol, it'll break down that one layer in your gut, and that's what creates leaky gut. Well, that one layer of cells, it's made of glutamine. So in order to help repair that, you need glutamine. And a good way to compare it is like protein is for your muscles the same way that glutamine is for your gut.
Mm.
So that's just like a powder for glutamine. And then, yeah, vitamin D3, fish oils, omega-3 fatty acids, glutamine. Those are three that I find really crucial. And I also, that's the cool thing about partnering with a coach, is that I do believe that there's times where you need to be on a reset. For example, if you're really stressed and you feel like your adrenals need a reset, it's either going to be affecting your HPA or your HPT access if you're really stressed. And so, based on what we find out, then that's when I would be able to be like, hey, I think you need to take these supplements just for a month to reset your adrenals.
Mm. Awesome. This is great. And I recommend, if you're listening to this, write all of these down, do your research. I actually have some glutamine, first form glutamine in my cabinet right now that I have not been taking. So I'm going to take that today.
Yeah, and glutamine is awesome because you can just put 2 scoops in, you don't
Yeah.
even taste it. And that's
Yeah.
funny because I have my 2 scoops of first form glutamine as well.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been first form users and just sellers, for many years with the gyms, and goodness gracious, I feel like we have a supplement shop in our kitchen. Like, we have so many supplements, and there will be times where my husband and I will take everything out and we'll organize it, and we're like, "All right, what's our protocol right now? What are we taking right now?" And I know you shouldn't do that because you're not going to see results with anything if you don't stay consistent, but sometimes it gets to be hard. So I recommend people, like, write it down, tape it to like your cabinet, like the inside, and like open it up and be like, all right, this is what I take in the morning. This is what I take at lunch. This is what I take at night, because you will forget if you don't make it a part of your routine. And I do think it is overwhelming, but I really love your approach of like brick by brick and layer by layer, and just like kind of starting one thing at a time, see how it makes you feel, and taking it 1 month at a time. I think that's a wonderful approach.
Yeah, thank you. And another thing that I would, for habit stacking with your supplements, Amazon has like little supplement containers for every day of the week, for every meal of the day. And those have been like, that's been a game changer for me. On Sundays, I just load up all of my supplements and then don't even have to think about it for the rest of the
Yeah.
week. All I do is pick it up and pop it in my mouth when it's that time of the day.
That's awesome. Well, Amanda, this has been so great. And I know our listeners are going to get so much value out of this episode. Where can they find you and learn more about all of your amazing coaching and your program, and just follow you along your journey?
Yeah, thank you so much. The best way that you can find me is on Instagram at Coach Souk, that's Souk, or you can email me at souk.coach@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was great.
Thank you.
And thank you for tuning in for another episode of the Beyond the Scale podcast. As always, make sure to check us out on YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Spotify, and share this episode with all of your friends. Until next time, thanks so much.